Hello, children. So now we've moved to fresh unit, and this unit is the therapeutic approaches. And to begin with, we'll be, of course, talking about the nature, the process of psychotherapy. So let's just understand what is psychotherapy firstly. So coming to the definition of psychotherapy, it is a voluntary relationship which is between the one who's seeking the treatment, also to say the client, and the one who is treating, also called the therapist. So psychotherapy, children, is nothing but it is the use of the psychological methods, and this is particularly based on the regular personal interactions, with the your own clients, and how can you help them bring about a change in their own behavior and help them overcome problems in a desired way, you know and now moving on, of course, to the purpose of the psychotherapies. So we are going to be coming up across a lot many psychotherapies, of course, a couple of them in this unit, where we also understand the way we actually conduct these psychotherapies, or what is the method basically. So each of these psychotherapies differ from one another, but the purpose, of course, remains the same in each of them. So let's understand the purpose of number one, the voluntary relationship between the client and the therapist. So the purpose is, of course, number one, to solve the psychological problems that are being faced by the client, and the second important keyword is building trust. So this rapport, which is formed in the form of this voluntary relationship, this rapport building is important between the client and the therapist, because this is in a way going to build the trust, between the client and the therapist. And now moving on, of course, to the aim of these psychotherapies. So they aim at, of course, number one, to change the maladaptive behaviors. So maladaptive behavior, of course, are the behaviors which are not acceptable as per the societal norms. They are maladaptive, definitely. And there could be several reasons of this maladaptive behavior. So one aim is, of course, to change the maladaptive behavior. Second is, of course, to decrease the sense of personal distress. We have talked about distress previously, and there are two kinds of stress. We have the eustress and the distress. A level of stress, a certain level of stress, which is good for us. It helps us keep ourselves motivated. It helps us be able to reach our desired goals or to achieve peak performances in life. That's okay. We all undergo that. But there is a level of stress which is beyond the normal stress levels, and it can cause the body's wear and tear. So that is distress. So, of course, the second aim is to be able to decrease that. And, of course, thirdly, it is to be able to help the client, adapt to his own environment in the most desirable way, to help them be able to adapt in a better manner to their own environment. That's where the adjustment issues come from, when you're not able to adapt yourself, or rather adjust yourself, with the changing environment, with the people. So there are so many adjustment issues that people undergo, and they can also be marriage problems, which are marital issues, occupational, your own professional life, social adjustment issues can be there. So, of course, it all talks about that, how much, an individual requires to really bring about those kind of changes, to be able to fit into that kind of environment, or to be able to adjust into the environment. So, of course, there are certain changes that the client also needs to make. And these psychotherapies definitely help us to really go to the root causes and to be able to bring about that shift, in the client's mindset, or so to say, his actions, behavior, thought processes, all of that. So now we also have certain characteristics of the psychotherapies. So when we talk about the um, therapeutic approaches, we do have certain characteristics of, so to say, the approaches. So one is, of course, when we talk about the first characteristic, it is all about the systematic application of principles. So there are going to be certain principles, which are going to be underlying the different theories of therapy. So there are, there is a systematic application of these principles. Second is, of course, the person who has to conduct or practice this psychotherapy. It's very important that they should have actually received the practical training under expert supervision, and they are only eligible for practicing the psychotherapy, and anyone else cannot practice it, and everybody cannot practice it. So anyone who's received that kind of a formal training under the supervision of expert therapists can only practice this. So if an untrained person tries to practice this, probably it can deteriorate the case or can cause more harm to the client. Then thirdly, of course, if you talk about a therapeutic approach or therapeutic situation, it calls in for a therapist, and it also calls in for a client who is actually seeking and, of course, is receiving help for his own emotional problems. So in all of these psychotherapies, if you see, the person is the focus, of attention. And coming to the fourth point, when we talk about the interaction between these two people, the therapist and the client, it's going to ultimately consolidate, their own therapeutic relationship. It's going to probably help them build that kind of a rapport, and of course, whatever information that goes into the therapist, right, coming from the client is, of course, very confidential. And this kind of a relationship that they have is voluntary. It's like an interpersonal kind of an you can say a relationship, and it's between two people, and it's a very dynamic relationship. So this human relationship is the very center, you know to any sort of psychological therapy, and it is the driving force for any kind of change. So it begins with the kind of rapport that's been built between the therapist and the client. So the rapport building is a must. The voluntary relationship, it's fostering, and the trust, and that's kind of very, very important. It's the driving force, actually. It's the core vehicle for any kind of change. So this was all about the slight introduction. Thank you so much.